the last time there was a general election, afterwards the Conservative Party were fined 70 grand and their treasurer reported to the police by the Electoral Commission because it was discovered that they had broken campaign spending rules to the tune of 275 grand and put 20 of their candidates at an unfair advantage against their rivals who had stuck to the campaign spending rules. And you can't, like, a fine doesn't seem like the right punishment, does it? When there's been cheating on democracy, they should rerun the election, right? You can't just show up to the Olympic 100-metre sprint on a moped and then get to keep your gold medal when you pay a small fine. They should take it off you and give it to whoever ran next fastest, right? Boris Johnson doesn't seem too bothered about this state of affairs. And he also seems to be doing everything in his power to run the worst election lead-up campaign in the history of humanity. So the Intelligence and Security Committee have published a 50-page report into Russian infiltration into UK politics and into the Conservative Party in general, and they have said that that report can be published publicly. But Boris Johnson has decided, no, not until after the election, that he will publish, not till... I mean, that just sounds like the dodgiest thing I've ever heard. Yes, darling, I'll show you my criminal record, but only once we're legally married. It should not work like that. If there's stuff in there that's incriminating, we have a right to know it now, and if there isn't, then he would obviously publish it. In the absence of it, I am going to conclude, for obvious reasons, that what it says is that Boris Johnson is the worst person ever to have set foot on planet Earth, and he should no way be leading our country. To distract from all this, Boris has been to Northern Ireland to visit a potato crisp factory, which does sound like a mildly patronising exercise, doesn't it? But regardless, while he was there, he was talking to people who asked questions about the customs border being placed between Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK under his Brexit deal, and he said that it didn't exist. He said there wouldn't be any customs checks for goods crossing that border, which is just an outright lie. It's literally there in his Brexit deal that's got his name on it, that he wrote. So he's either doesn't know what his own Brexit deal is about, or he's willing to just outright lie. And either of those things makes him wholly unsuited to run the country. And the rest of the Conservative Party are not doing any better. Meanwhile, Jacob Rhys-Mogg has been insulting the victims of the Grenfell tragedy. Baroness Jenkins, the Conservative peer, has said that poor people use food banks because they can't cook. Which is like saying that people drive cars because they've forgotten how to run marathons. No, that is not how it works. The sensible thing to do would be to distract people from these stories by focusing on policy. That would be the positive way to go about this. But of course the Conservatives can't do that, because whenever they make a policy pledge, the next thing they do is break it. Like when they came to power, they said they were going to reduce the deficit, and they didn't. It went up. It went up through the roof dramatically. At one point they pledged that they were going to have 5,000 new GPs by 2020, and they're not. They're nowhere near it. They haven't met that pledge at all. And what Boris Johnson has now done is pledged that there'll be 6,000 more GPs by the year 2025. But all he's offering is more training places. He isn't offering a better salary. He isn't offering better conditions, better terms, more support, the chance to be a part of an NHS that isn't being surreptitiously sold off to private investors every time we glance in the other direction. So the only thing the Conservatives have been able to do is to find a former Labour MP who now supports Boris Johnson. We're talking, of course, about Ian Austin, who was a Labour MP for a while and then fell out with Jeremy Corbyn and has now given a brief interview saying that he supports Boris Johnson instead. Ian was reported on by Spiked magazine. They wrote an article about him called What Integrity Looks Like, which is super ironic because Spiked magazine's actual slogan is What Integrity Doesn't Look Like. I don't read it myself, I prefer journalism. The Conservatives have then spent over £1,000 making sure that that video was viewed on Facebook by more than 100,000 people, which in the wake of the Cambridge Analytica scandal last time around looks really dodgy, and it's yet more campaign spending that could get them in trouble. But good news on that front. Why waste money on Facebook and social media advertising when you can get the Metro newspaper to print what is essentially your distracting nonsense press release? Full-size headline on the front page, print 1.5 million copies and handed out at train stations up and down the country, claiming, the Metro newspaper claims to be politically neutral, but it is owned by the same people who own the Daily Mail, which has never smelt all that politically neutral, has it? And the thing is this, democracy is the only way we can run our country. It's the only way we can run anything. It's a brilliant system, but it is only a brilliant system if people have access to good, fair information and elections are run on a good, fair basis. And that means that the Electoral Commission needs to be given the power to actually cancel results and rerun them when people are shown to have broken the rules. It means that the public has a right to know what is in the report from the Intelligence and Securities Committee. And it means that we need a fair and well-regulated press that will cover all the horrific things that the Conservatives are doing, rather than focusing in on the one former Labour MP they found that says something that suits their agenda. We've got a few weeks to try and get some honest and interesting messages out, and it feels like an uphill battle, but let's do what we can, eh?